Okay, hi everyone. Thanks. I'm really glad to be able to participate in this online, and I've enjoyed all the great talks so far, um, and I feel a bit intimidated to close it out with this great panel. But I'm going to tell a story. I work at the University of Aberdeen in the Spanish and Latin American Studies department, and I focus on film and visual culture. So I'm going to tell a brief story about a visit to the Whitney Museum in New York as a year ago, and exhibits I saw there, and then wandering around the surrounding neighborhood in Lower Manhattan and seeing that neighborhood also was from an art as pieces of art and artifice. So this was a sweltering afternoon in July 2024. We took the elevator to the top floor and we were greeted by an odd sight. 18 small citrus trees under grow lights in an impersonal white-walled gallery. This was Portable Orchard, a piece originally created by Helen and Newton Harrison back in 1972, coincidentally the year I was born. That called attention to the possibility that pollution could make outdoor agriculture inviable, forcing us to recreate growing environments indoors. Panels on the walls displayed texts that had inspired the Harrisons, Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, the Whole Earth Catalog. There was a quaint retro feel to the whole reproduction of this 1970s counterculture exhibition. But the concept is obviously more timely than ever. The Harrisons were pioneers of ecological art. Their survival pieces were living ecosystems cultivated within exhibition spaces, a hog pasture, fish farms, and this portable citrus grove. They pose the question of what it would take to engineer survival when we can no longer rely on the natural cycles of the outside world. Transplanted to Lower Manhattan in 2024, the piece echoed nearby urban green spaces. Just outside the exhibition hall, the Whitney's top terrace offered a view of Little Island, a curated park floating above the water, and a view of how the museum's terraces cascade like giant steps down to the High Line. If you've been to New York in recent years, you probably know the High Line. It's an old elevated railway set for destruction, but saved by local activists and turned into a park. These local activists loved the way that nature had reclaimed, recolonized the abandoned railway on its own. And this rewilding was accompanied by derelict human activities that also took place there off the grid. The High Line is a celebrated example of the new perennial movement. Curated plant communities that mimic wild prairies and woodlands. The project aspires to environmental sustainability with the use of native drought-resistant plants, on-site composting, local sourcing, etc. However, critics call the High Line an ecological simulacrum, a beautified imitation of the self-seeded wilderness that once grew there. In order to gain approval by City Hall, the project was also absorbed into gentrification, making what one resident called a devil's bargain. This unique public space became what some have described as a canyon through a wall of luxury high-rise condos. And a survey of nearby low-income housing found most residents felt the park wasn't for them. These invisible walls mirror those of elite art institutions like the Whitney. Despite efforts to foster inclusivity, both spaces reflect the broader exclusions shaping urban, cultural, and ecological experiments. The Whitney Biennial exhibition, also on display that summer, posed similar questions about art, artifice, and inclusion. Titled Even Better Than the Real Thing, it asked artists to explore authenticity in the age of AI. One striking piece was Damien Dene Yazi's neon sign installation. It was made up of three red signs that flashed a poem titled We must stop imagining apocalypse/genocide, and we must imagine liberation. It's a critique of what the artist calls the Euro-American apocalyptic imaginary, the idea that collapse is coming for everyone equally, but in fact, indigenous peoples have already survived multiple apocalypses. The piece contains many hidden layers. The artist secretly programmed the neon letters to flicker in a pattern that intermittently spells out Free Palestine. And the signs faced west, across the Hudson River, the historical direction of colonial expansion. So the words project outward toward history, while the reflection throws them back into the museum's walls, asking about the institution's own histories and exclusions. So the Harrison's question about whether we can engineer survival seems rather prophetic today. As, for example, the climate crisis, it fuels dreams of escape for the super rich. Bunkers, Mars rockets, tax haven communities beyond national borders with seed banks and body modification clinics. With all that in mind, the museum's cascading outdoor terraces evoke ship decks. Coupled with the portable orchard inside, they conjure images of spaceships with self-contained microclimates. The Harrison's original question is increasingly becoming a question of who is going to get a ticket and in which class. And that's all. Thank you.